I tend to focus on and remember and think about the bad clients instead of thinking about all the good clients that are maybe easy to take for granted because they're so nice. So you have to stop and think about letting go of the weeds and embracing the flowers, because that's where you're going to find happiness. And at the end of the day, you're going to carry the baggage of whatever happened that day home with you.
Yeah.
I'd much rather be happy and say, oh, this was a great client, or this was an awesome puppy that I saw today, or I made a great diagnosis and I helped out this pet and the owners were grateful. Those are the things that are uplifting and keep me happy as a vet.
Hi, guys, and welcome to the House Call Vet Cafe podcast. I'm Dr. Eve Harrison. I'm a full-time integrative concierge house call veterinarian in Los Angeles, and I help other vets to build their unique mobile practices on their terms. This podcast is for and by house call and mobile veterinarians, so it is meant to give our community a platform to connect, to share our stories, to lift each other up, and to support each other. Most of us work solo as lone wolves, right? So for me, it's been really powerful to be able to physically hear the voices of my colleagues from all over the world and to get a chance to feel that we truly are part of a community of very real other human beings who get it. While you may be alone in that little bubble of your own vehicle when you're on the road seeing patients, I welcome you to join our community by tuning into our own podcast when you're on your way to your next house call. Whether you're a super experienced house call vet with 30 years of experience, you're a brand new prospective house call vet just looking to get started, or you're house call curious, there will be something for you in this podcast. Each episode, you will hear interviews from other mobile veterinarians just like yourself who are doing unique and innovative things, vets who are sharing their stories, their struggles and challenges, and you can also look forward to hearing valuable information and perspectives from specialists and experts outside of our micro niche. And finally, if becoming a house call veterinarian is something that you've been thinking about exploring, or you're looking for some extra support getting your own mobile practice to feel more profitable and sustainable for you, check out the information in the show notes about my course and our above and beyond supportive private community for members only, plus our monthly group coaching sessions within the House Call Vet Academy. You can also check out my free public Facebook group, which is also called the House Call Vet Cafe, the same name as this podcast, and which is a warm and cozy community for mobile vets to support each other in professional and personal development, in creative entrepreneurship, and in friendship. So thank you guys for spending time with me today. Let's dive into the episode.
Hey everyone, we have a special guest with us today. We have Dr. Steve Smith. He graduated from the College of Veterinary Medicine at Michigan State University and earned his Michigan veterinary license in 1990. He worked in the Grosse Pointe, Detroit for the next 6 years. Michigan was nice, but Steve always wanted to move to California. He earned his California veterinary license in 1996 and moved to Los Angeles a few months later. Since then, Steve has worked as a full-time vet at a couple of hospitals. He's done relief work at over 200 daytime and emergency hospitals. 20 years ago, he decided to start up a house call practice, and he's been happy ever since. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks for having me over.
Yeah. So I'm particularly excited about this episode because Steve is a local colleague and we've spent some time together. We've gone out to like a crazy pirate bar and tried all different crazy beverages and stuff. And Steve is also the admin of a Los Angeles mobile veterinary group on Facebook. So he's kind of got the community held in his little palm. And so it's nice to have you here. Steve is a character. He's one of, like, to my understanding, one of the original house call vets in the area who's still practicing. And so I wanted to welcome you to the podcast by asking you the question I ask every time, which is, what is your favorite snack to eat in the car?
You know, I'm not really a snacker. I usually just have a bottle of water in the car, and once in a blue moon, I'll stop and get a burger someplace, but normally I don't have food in the car to snack on.
Okay. I feel like I remember you saying that you and your vet tech kind of go out to eat lunch sometimes. Did I imagine that?
No, we might stop at a Starbucks here and
Yeah.
there, but mostly we're just trying to get from place to place to place to get the day done and get things done as quickly as we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have a pretty busy practice as far as I kind of remember. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to do 15 to 20 house calls a week if I can. I work Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, all day with a technician. And then I work sporadically on the other days of the week by myself, things I can do without a technician. So yeah, so it's my schedule's sort of predictable, but also flexible for things that come up.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like standard house call fare. Nice. Can you tell me a little bit about how you became a house call vet?
Well, it started with me wanting to be house call euthanasia only
Mhm.
practice. I was working in a hospital with another doctor 20 to 25 years ago, and she was talking about wanting to start a house call euthanasia only practice. And those are usually very successful. There weren't that many of them 20 years ago. So I planted the seed in my head, like, I think maybe I want to do that too. And then around the same time, my husband and I had a 18-year-old Lhasa Apso that was in bad shape, and he had bad arthritis and dementia, and we were talking about putting him to sleep. And because I'm a veterinarian, I wasn't a house call vet at that time, but I was like, we could do it at home. I just need to go to a hospital that I work at and get the drugs and come back. So we decided to do this on a Sunday. I went and got the drugs and came back home. And when I was away, he had sort of transformed the living room. The lights were all turned down. He had a fire in the fireplace. He had candles burning. He had music on the stereo. It was very comforting and soothing. And I looked around kind of surprised, like I wasn't expecting this, but this is great. Like
Yep.
everybody, if you have to put your pet to sleep, should have the opportunity to do it like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that gave me the extra push to start the practice. So I came up with a name and I developed a website and started ordering from vendors, and it sort of just took off. Like I started doing friends and neighbors' pets. And then some of the hospitals I was doing relief work at found out that I was doing house calls, and I was getting referrals without even asking. I was getting referrals from these hospitals. One of my clients, who was also a friend, wrote a Yelp review, which was a big new thing 20 years ago. You were my first Yelp. And then people would look at Yelp. They're starting to use Yelp to find businesses to use. And my Yelp reviews were sort of like snowballing. And so it just very quickly, like within the first year, I got pretty busy. And so I could stop doing relief work and just focus only on house calls. And that was like 19 years ago. And been doing that ever since.
Fantastic. I mean, it's so interesting that it sort of started with a vision to focus on euthanasia and then coming home to your husband's like beautiful setup that inspired even further inspiration to go in that path and to just like have that kind of homey and holistic experience of, this is kind of a big deal. There should be a fireplace, there should be candles. Like that's beautiful. And that took you into the next phase of going with the practice. And so how did it kind of shift over from focus on euthanasia end of life to the other types of work you do?
I was designing my website for euthanasia only. It was sort of a very sad looking website. The color palette was like gray and brown, and there were pictures of all the pets in my life that I'd lost.
No.
And I thought, this is kind of depressing. So I thought maybe I should decide to broaden my scope and do general medicine also. And then I shifted my website to be a lot more colorful, and it had a lot of information about things besides just putting pets to sleep at home. And so it was a very quick decision, and I was very happy with it. So I stuck with it.
Awesome. And you do have an amazing website. It's really quite kick-ass.
Oh, thank you. Well, the one I have now, I paid a web developer in England to do that one. And so it was not my original site, because when websites became all web friendly and people are using their iPhone, and 50% of people find my website on a mobile device these days.
Right.
So I needed to find a web developer who could do a mobile friendly website for me. So I found this company called Root Studio in Lancashire, England, because they had done a really cool looking dog walking website for somebody.
Mhm.
Because as I was looking around the internet, I found this dog walking site for somebody who walks dogs in Lancashire, England. But it was a really cool site. It had like animated animals and like cartoon characters and kind of a cool feel to it. I didn't want a cookie cutter templatey website. I wanted something creative and cool. So that's what I got.
Yeah, you definitely have something creative and cool. And I think kind of templatey websites are kind of like not quite the right vibe, not quite the right look and feel for an independent house call vet. So I think your developer kind of hit it right on the head and you found the right one for you. That's really cool.
Yeah. And it cost about $5,000, and they wanted to give me a new logo too. So I let them do that. But they've been pretty supportive over the years. Like if I need little tweaks here and there on my website, they'll help me out really quickly, and it doesn't cost very much extra.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like a $5,000 website is not out of the range of what's appropriate. A really good website is a few $1,000 unless you're doing it yourself. And then they always want to change the logo. Like any time you work with a new web developer, they want to change the logo, they want to change the brand. So, yeah, I mean, whatever they did, it turned out great.
When I go to veterinary conventions, which I haven't since COVID started, but there's a lot of people at the exhibit hall at the convention that are web developers and they want to sell people on making them a new website. And so they're like, "Hey, do you have a website?" As you're walking past their booth. And I'm like, "Yeah, I have a really good website actually." And then they ask me to tell them the domain name and they type it into there. Even though I really like my website and you like my website, and I think it's a really good website. The first thing they do is start to pick it apart.
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, there's a lot going on here." I'm like, "I'm not going to pay for a new website. I was just throwing off my website."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of those companies are actually like doing the absolute template stuff.
oh, totally.
It's hilarious. It kind of reminds me of you get those spam emails. I get like 20 or to 50 of them like a day from people saying, I saw your website. It might need more
Oh,
SEO, like all these
oh yeah,
like
the Etsy, the search engine optimization emails.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And like, there's mistakes in your website. We can fix them for you for a small fee or.
Yeah, it's
And I'm like, nah, I'm pretty darn happy with it. And it was created by really good web developers. So I don't think there's any mistakes in it.
correct. Yeah, well, for what it's worth, I've never seen any mistakes in your site. Oh my god. Yeah, like the world of web developers, it's very interesting. Very aggressive marketers at times, I've noticed. But hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, I figured you have to have a website. Even 20 years ago when I started, before I opened my doors, so to speak, I was like, I have to have a website because that's what I look for if I'm going to try out a business is I'm going to look to their website and see what's there. That way I get to kind of research them or investigate them more thoroughly than you could with a phone call to a business or a Yellow Pages ad or something.
Mhm.
So I look at my colleagues' websites a lot just to see what they're doing.
Sure, sure. And you're kind of a techie person. Like I know you do a little bit of like graphic design and stuff like that. So you already kind of have an eye for that type of thing.
Yeah. In fact, when I was in high school, I was deciding what to major in college. And my mom at the time worked for an art college in Detroit, Michigan, where I lived. I lived in Metro Detroit. And I was almost going to go to art school because I could have gone free because my mom worked for the school. And one of my friends, and we edited the high school newspaper together, a woman named Jane Field. She's like, no, you can't go to art school. You have to do something like requires more brain power, which I thought was a weird way to put it. But I'm like, okay, maybe I'll be a veterinarian instead.
Mhm.
Because that was my other thought processes. I always liked anatomy and physiology. We always had dogs and cats growing up. So for me, it was kind of a natural choice of a career to combine all these things I like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I decided to go to vet school.
Excellent. And can I pick your brain as a graphic design inclined person? What do you think makes a good logo for a house call vet?
It's a tough one because I've seen a lot of them. And I've seen on Facebook where people on these veterinarian pages putting up their prospective logos, like choices that they came up with themselves or their graphic designer presented them choices. I think simplicity is best. And if something's really clever, that's also good. And like the FedEx logo, how it has like an arrow as part of that logo is clever. So I think cleverness is helpful in the logo. If it's eye catching, colorful, simple, those would be the things I would use to describe a good logo.
Awesome. I think that's super helpful. And speaking of logos, and I guess this is not really relevant, but kind of jumping back to the conversation we were having about end of life care and how you had to put your own to sleep. I remember you telling me something really touching about how your animals are buried by the Hollywood sign.
Oh yeah. Four of my pets over the years, either one passed away suddenly at home with heart failure, but the others were all pets that I put to sleep when the time came. And their ashes are all it's not a dog park, but people take their dogs there. But it's a big park near the Hollywood sign in Hollywood. And a lot of tourists go there. There's a little playground there for kids. And way back when, before GPS navigation became a thing and before the Hollywood area was overwhelmed with tourists, that was kind of a quiet little park. And so my husband and I scattered ashes for four pets there at the tree line at the back of the park.
Beautiful.
Now it's very inundated with tourists all day, every day.
Yeah.
So it's not the park it used to be, and I still have two pets' ashes to scatter. I kind of want to put them in the same place, but it's hard to find a time where there's nobody there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a personal thing for sure. Like you kind of want it to have that special, like ceremonial feel, not having tourists all over the place at that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. So I drive by that park almost every day on my way to and from house calls.
Yeah.
If I'm going because I'm in Hollywood, so I'm going to the valley, like Burbank or Studio City, or I might just go over the hill and go past that park.
Hmm. Hmm. Very cool. Yeah. It's very moving. Whenever I see the Hollywood sign, I think of you and your animals now.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
That's
I landed in Hollywood. When I was a kid, my mom subscribed to two magazines. One was Cosmopolitan and one was Rona Barrett's Hollywood. And so I would read through both magazines actually and look at all the pictures. And Rona Barrett's Hollywood is about like she was a celebrity reporter before TMZ and et cetera. And so it was all these glamorous photos of celebrities and things. And I thought, I really want to maybe someday go to Hollywood.
yeah.
And I live near the Hollywood sign now.
That's so kick-ass. Yeah. I mean, it's like the hills there are just kind of beautiful to look at. Whenever I drive through that area, I'm like, damn, this is a cool place that we live in, isn't it?
It is. It's nice because I've never known so many neighbors as the place I live right now. And mostly it's through dog walking because everybody's a dog. Everybody has dogs and everybody walks their dogs because no one really has yards.
Great.
So everybody's walking their dogs up and down the sidewalk. And so that's how you meet and greet your neighbors here. And I know so many and I've lived here for 20 years. So it's a pretty cool thing. And you're close to downtown Hollywood. You're sort of close to downtown LA, but you're in a nice little residential neighborhood.
That's cool. Have you gotten clients just from kind of meeting people out with their dogs?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people know me in the neighborhood as a veterinarian because sometimes I'll meet people and they're like, "Oh, you're the vet." I'm like, "Yep,
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned that, like, I think back in vet school, people had said to you, yeah, when you go to parties, that folks are going to start asking you veterinary questions and you're going to get super sick of it, and that you actually haven't gotten sick of it. Like, you love it. Is that still?
yeah." I think being veterinarian is very cool. First of all, I think it's a very cool job to be able to tell somebody that you're a veterinarian. I think there's a whole cool factor. And I like dogs and cats. And so when people ask me questions about their dogs and cats, I like being able to help them. I'd like to be able to answer their questions or just talk about their pets with them, you know, and everyone's got questions, food questions, training questions, can you look at this bump? What do you think that is? What do you recommend for fleas and ticks? Like there's all sorts of questions. And I never got tired of answering these questions.
That's amazing. Like, those questions tend to get so many of us totally aggravated. So,
They also told me when I was a young veterinarian and no one believed me or listened to what I was saying because I was so young. They're like, when you get gray hair, then people will start taking you seriously. So obviously I have gray hair now. So
fantastic. Yeah. Do people take you more seriously?
I think so. I think now more so than when I was a new graduate.
Young sprout. Yeah.
But I also know a lot more now.
Yeah. Fair
Through
enough.
experience, mostly experience.
It's very interesting is since I got blue hair, folks who are not watching the YouTube, I have blue hair and there's a rainbow in the front, which is really hard to see in the YouTube video right now recording. But ever since I did that, more people have taken me seriously. It's strange.
Huh.
People seem to like it. Very interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you've had just a really interesting history in Los Angeles. I'm just kind of curious to hear. I mean, working 200 clinics in Los Angeles and doing relief.
Yeah. It was about 7 years. I was doing relief work primarily, and I went all over LA County, Orange County, Palm Desert, Monterey, San Francisco, and I did a lot of it just to travel and see the state because I moved here in 1996 from Michigan. At first, Los Angeles is very daunting to drive around, but after doing relief work for such a long time, it became like the back of my hand, as they say. Like Los Angeles is very familiar to me, and now when I'm doing house calls, I've almost been like everywhere. And if I'm in a neighborhood I've never been to before, it strikes me as odd. Like I've never been here before. That's weird.
Yeah, yeah.
So I could be a good taxi driver or a Uber driver
It's
'cause I
like
know
enjoy the novelty. Is that right? Like new environments. You're like, oh, cool.
I do love one of the side effects of doing house calls is you get to see people's homes on the inside. Like
So-
you get to go inside people's homes. And sometimes, I mean, I have got clients that have $30 million homes and I've got clients who live in apartment buildings with bars on the windows. So I have a whole spectrum of different kinds of clients and they're all good, but I think I prefer the clients that are sort of in the middle.
yeah, yeah. Tell me about that. I'm curious. Like, what is it that you like about that sort of middle ground?
Well, I get on good with clients that are, I guess it's good if they have a good sense of humor because I like to joke around and I
Okay.
like to have clients that are comfortable with jokes and,
Yeah.
just getting off the main reason that I'm at their house, or I'll compliment them on something in their house. I always like to do that, like whether it's an architectural feature of their house or artwork, or I'm always like trying to engage people into talking about something besides their pet, maybe. I also like to look at bookshelves to read all the titles and see what they're into and see what books they read. So it's a fascinating sort of dive into Los Angeles culture.
Yeah. I find that to be the case as well. I like to really get to know my clients as well. And I'm a huge like bookworm. So I'll look at people's bookshelves and be like, oh, that's what's inside your brain. Interesting.
Yeah. If somebody's I've been in some houses where you see like the whole encyclopedia of Scientology.
And what say you to that?
I'm like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah. Now I know. Gotta go.
Actually, I did do a house call to the Scientology Celebrity Center in Hollywood.
No way.
And it's almost like being something like in the White House because there's so many people that are security people roaming around with the little earwigs and they're all talking to their wrists. And you're on camera and probably being audio recorded. But I still found it kind of interesting to be there.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I wanted to take a quick break to remind everyone that we have the House Call and Mobile Vet virtual conference coming up. Ticket sales are open again for our third annual conference, February 3rd and 4th, 2024. This is a conference where we actually can be together face to face to celebrate each other and learn together in community. This is a conference that is for us and by us. This is where we get to meet our colleagues from all over the world, connect with our people in real time, learn actionable tips, tricks, and inspiration that is specific to our special micro niche of practice. If you're unsure if this is for you, here's what a few attendees have said in the past. Dr. M said, "It was 1,000 times more intimate than any conference, virtual or in person, that I've ever attended." Dr. A said, "It was a perfect mix of practical information regarding the logistics of seeing house call appointments and the mental side of house call business ownership." Dr. D said, "There were times that I just teared up with emotion to feel a part of a wonderful group and to know that I was not alone in this adventure." You're truly not alone. We're all here with you, no matter what type of mobile or house call practice you have, or even if you're brand new to this community. This conference is for you if you're super experienced or if you're still thinking about whether you want to be a house call or mobile vet to begin with. This conference is for you whether you're doing end-of-life care in the home, whether you're doing acupuncture-only house calls, whether you're an integrative vet, or whether you're a full-service Laboit practice. This conference is for you if you're anything in between. If you can't make it in person, no worries. Recordings are available afterwards for a limited time. Early bird prices are available before January 1st, 2024, so you do get over $100 off your ticket if you sign up before the new year. Vet Techs and House Call Vet Academy participants get an additional discount off the price through December 1st, 2023. All of the information, including discount codes, is in the link in the show notes, so please reach out if you have any questions, and I can't wait to see you there.
You have also some really interesting experiences that I feel like you've mentioned about doing some health certificates for like royalty in hotels while they're staying in Los Angeles and traveling the world. And
Yeah, I get a number of calls from the Beverly Hills hotels. They often call me up to see if I can help some of their guests that need something. I remember there was a family here from, I want to say Saudi Arabia, and they got a puppy while they were here. They had 2 children. The boy got a puppy and the daughter got plastic surgery.
seems fair.
So I went to this hotel in Beverly Hills to take care of the puppy and give it puppy vaccines.
Uh-huh. Okay. And how was it?
It was good. It was good. It was some nice people. I remember the son had lots of shoes. He had his own room in the hotel, and it was just like he had like about 50 pairs of shoes
Okay.
and a puppy.
Sounds like a good life. Sounds like just a good scene. That's excellent.
Yeah, I hardly ever say no to house calls unless I get a really weird vibe from somebody when they reach out. I pretty much see everybody. But if I do get a weird vibe from people, like a email with 100 paragraphs or text message with like 1,000 words, that's like, for me, I found it to be a red flag about people that I'm like, maybe not, maybe not.
Yeah. And how do you handle that when you see those?
Oh, I often just tell them I'm not available for X number of days, and their pet should probably be seen sooner. Or I tell them this is something that really should be seen at a hospital, not on a house call basis.
Not on this house call basis, anyway.
Well, and I've learned to trust my instincts, and I've learned through mistakes too that I've given people the benefit of the doubt, and then I learn afterwards I shouldn't have done that, and I trust your instincts. Your instincts told you don't go to this house call, and you went anyway, and then you suffered.
Right, right. I've had the same experience many times. I've learned very much the hard way that when it comes to going into someone's home and starting a rapport with someone on a house call basis, like your gut is the ultimate litmus test. Like, don't overlook that gut. Like, just don't do
Yeah.
it.
And the more you've done house calls, the more it becomes clear. Like you look for red flags.
Mhm.
I was at a house call. One of the ones I regretted going to, it was a young woman and her cat, and then her elderly father was there with us. And we're all getting along well and looking at the cat and talking about the cat. And at one point, the father, who's been pretty quiet, starts talking about the cat. And the daughter goes over to him and says, "Dad, shut up." Like just totally out of character, out of the blue. Like that wasn't nice. And then afterwards, there was a series of like mean emails that she sent to me. I forget why. And I'm like, should have trusted my instincts. Should have trusted my instincts.
And it ended up being more problematic going forward.
Yes. Well, no, we did go forward after that. It was just like, that was it. That was the end of the relationship,
Excellent.
which happens. Wait, what's on a blue moon? I'm usually pretty good at getting good clients, nice clients, clients I feel comfortable with, and I know they feel comfortable with me. And I think that's just the best job a veterinarian can have. Even if you're a farm veterinarian and the farmers love you, you love the farmer, you know, it's the same sort of rapport you get with that. But this is just with dogs and cats inside people's houses.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. To me, that's very much the appeal of house call practice, that you can really fine tune the match and you yourself can personally feel out the red flags to figure out. So you're not just like seeing whoever comes to the door. You're going for an experience that's mutually beneficial, that you're appreciated, you're understood, and vice versa. And I think that's the magic. And I agree with you. This is the best way to be a vet, in my opinion, anyway.
I think so. I think some people may not be cut out to be house call vets, but they might prefer working in a hospital, having a support staff, having a safety net, having more toys, x-rays, surgery, dentistry. But I have adapted to just not need to do those things in my practice. And so to me, it's like the happiest I've ever been. When I was doing relief work and I was doing working, especially emergency hospitals, I wanted to not be a vet anymore. There's time I wanted to stop being a veterinarian. I was like, what can I do with my license and my degree besides practice? And I'm like, no, it's not a lot.
Yeah,
But I hated it. The stress of emergency practice was so bad that I really hated it. I hated being a veterinarian.
I relate to that.
And now I haven't said that in 20 years.
Yeah. Way to take it back to that time. But I mean, even now, 20 years later, so many people feel that same way. And I think that's kind of why we're seeing this huge influx of veterinarians moving into the house call space to kind of like reclaim their
Yeah.
lives as medicine how they
Yeah.
want.
When I started, there were maybe 5, 6 house call vets in Los Angeles. And now there's at least 30 with websites.
Yeah. LA is crawling with us, isn't it?
It is. And then the corporate side has sort of moved in, better vets and the vets have moved into Los Angeles, and I feel their presence a little bit.
Yep.
Sometimes I get record requests from these companies for a mutual client.
Yes.
Although the last one was for a really evil dog, so I didn't mind.
You're like, oh, good.
I'm like, you can have that dog. That's good.
That's funny. Usually I'm getting the overflow from them rather than the other way around. But if it were to go the other way around, I would say good riddance as well. Good. Off you go. Hope you enjoy that better. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, what was the company that came to LA and left vetted?
Yeah, that was not good.
So they didn't last. They didn't charge people what they should to keep the company going. So they spent all their venture capital and then they had to close.
Yeah, I've got strong opinions about that one for sure.
Well, and unfortunately, we as house call veterinarians, we have to charge more than people would pay at a hospital, because in a hospital, a veterinarian might see 10 to 20 clients a day in a general practice, daytime practice. I see 4, 5, 6 house calls a day. So I see far fewer patients. And there's also time driving between locations. So I can't possibly see 10 to 20 patients a day. So I have to charge more
Right.
per patient just to function.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I guess some of the chains are more into the high volume, which kind of defeats the purpose, like 6 to 8 to 10 appointments in a day. That's a lot. And that changes the tone of a house call visit. It really assembly lines it, doesn't it? Which is kind of the opposite of what house.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, I mean, I remember like one of the better vets says that you'll do like 8 45-minute appointments per day and they schedule them all for you. You don't know what you're walking into. And they assign a technician to you, a veterinary technician that is kind of more in charge than you are as far as the money goes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. One of the things I like about being a house call vet is I can choose. my hours, my days. I can be selective about my clients, my patients.
That's
So
it.
if you work for a corporation owned house call business, you have no say in anything. You just have to show up and do what they've planned for you.
Yeah.
And that goes against every grain I have.
Amen. Amen. And for those listening, Steve said it. I didn't force him.
But it's true. It's the truth.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about most of being a house call veterinarian is my whole life, I've never really liked anybody telling me what to do.
Same.
And for the first time as a veterinarian, well, for 20 years now, I can not have anybody tell me what to do. I'm pretty much autonomous. I can do what I want. I can see the cases I think I'm going to be good at. I can decline the cases that are beyond my grasp, things that need to go to a hospital, things that need something I can't provide. Also, I don't have to see certain breeds of dogs anymore.
Yeah.
I've been attacked over the years by Rottweilers. I worked in Detroit for 6 years and there were lots of Rottweilers.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I could have been killed by a Rottweiler if not for a muzzle or a snare pull or an anesthetic injection to give to the dog. So I had this epiphany as a house call vet, like I don't have to see Rottweilers anymore because I have nightmares about Rottweilers.
Yeah.
And so there might be some really lovely, sweet Rottweilers out there in the world that need a house call, but I can't take the chance. I
Right.
have to protect myself. If I get injured on the job, my whole practice shuts down for X number of weeks.
Right.
Whereas if someone gets injured in a hospital, the hospital can carry on with one employee in the hospital. The hospital can still service their clientele and they can still keep their doors open. I have to protect myself from injury so I can continue to practice and like my practice can stay open.
Yeah. I mean, that's highly admirable. I love that. I love that you maintain that boundary. And likewise, like, I don't have a specific thing with a breed, but if I get the sense an animal is not one that I feel safe or comfortable working with, I have no hesitation to decline that client. But likewise, I think the biggest parallel is that I now can decline asshole clients. I'm not willing to get bitten by a human, whatever that looks like, so I also decline to work with assholes or whatever is perceived by me to be a red flag that this may be an asshole. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. I get it. And usually people divulge that maybe they're not aware of it, but they divulge that they're an asshole pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah. And, like, granted, like, an asshole I'm being a little comical, like, humans are humans, and sometimes people are reactive because of what they've been through, but, if you're approaching me as an asshole, whether you are an asshole or not, that's something that I'm not willing to work through at this point. We'll put it that way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's so many nice people out there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't know if it's just veterinarians that do this, but we tend to focus on the weeds in the garden and not the flowers. I tend to focus on and remember and think about the bad clients instead of thinking about all the good clients that are maybe easy to take for granted because they're so nice. So you have to stop and think about letting go of the weeds and embracing the flowers because that's where you're going to find happiness. And at the end of the day, you're going to carry the baggage of whatever happened that day home with you.
Yeah.
I'd much rather be happy and say, oh, this was a great client, or this was an awesome puppy that I saw today, or I made a great diagnosis and I helped out this pet and the owners were grateful. Those are the things that are uplifting and keep me happy as a vet.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, we all have that negative bias, that negative, like, cognitive bias to kind of focus on the weeds instead of the flowers. So I love that you're putting some intentionality behind that and trying to enjoy the job and trying to enjoy the work. I mean, that's the best we can all do. And I love how the house call paradigm allows us to do that and to kind of like pick our bouquet of flowers. Like, oh, this is a great experience. I have this client and this patient, and this is how I want to run things. So very cool.
Yeah, I have a lot of great clients over 20 years. I've worked in a practice long enough that I've actually seen pets go from puppies and kittens to elderly cats and dogs, and sometimes even being put to sleep because it's that time. And so that you get to know the person, the pet owner, over such a long period of time. And I've never had that. I've always worked at practices for short amounts of time, like 4 years or less. Or I've done relief shifts where you're there for like a day or a week and you don't really get to know your clients. So this is like another good thing about being in a practice that I like for 20 years is I get to see the whole lifetime of a pet.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's fantastic. Definitely agree with that. I've definitely since becoming a house call vet, maybe about 7 years ago, a little over 7 years ago at this point, I'm seeing getting like the full circle at this point, and you being in it for 20 years, of course, seeing multiple lifetimes and things like that. It's a really
Yeah.
beautiful Mhm.
I have some really good clients, husband and wife. Now they have 2 kids. When I first met them, I was to put their golden retriever to sleep. They lived in Koreatown, and that was the first visit. And then they got a puppy. So they called me and I went to take care of this puppy. And then the puppy lived, it was another golden retriever. That dog lived to be about 14 years old. And I ended up putting that dog to sleep when the time came. And they got a new golden retriever.
Mm.
It's probably about a year old now. So it's like they're the third generation of golden retriever that I've helped this family with.
Fantastic.
And I wouldn't trade it. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's beautiful work. It really is. Thank you for sharing your experiences and stories here. And before we close up, is there anything else that you'd like for people to know about you, or any advice or tips that you'd like to give to the house call vet community, or anything else that you'd like to share kind of freestyle here?
I don't know. What would I like to tell? I think what I would tell any professional is learn to relax, learn to love your job. If they say, if you love your job, you never have to work a day in your life. And I read on Facebook, there's this page, Not One More Vet, which addresses stressed out veterinarians that might become suicidal at some point in their lives. And this is sort of a support group, but it's so many people in it right now. It's this huge support group, like tens of thousands of veterinarians in this group. And I read about all these stories about veterinarians who are going through a lot of bad times. And normally it's they're new graduates or recent graduates. They've been in veterinary medicine for a few years and they've got big student loans, and maybe they've got stressful relationships, or their spouse doesn't understand how much they have to work and they're going through a divorce now, or their heart pets they had all through school is now sick and old and dying. And then the clients are mean to them and they're getting bad reviews. And there's a lot of shit being piled on some of these younger vets. And so it's no wonder that some of them decide the best answer is to leave the planet. In my first 6 months of work, I hated being a vet also. I worked in the shadow of my first boss and everybody loved him and nobody wanted to see the new guy. And so if I was on the phone with my family all the time going, I'm quitting this job. I hate this job. I don't know what to do. I don't feel like I'm appreciated. I feel like everybody wants to see the other vet and not me. And I don't know what to do. And so I was sort of despondent for the first 6 months. And then things just kept getting better and better. As you get more experience as a vet, you get more confidence, I think, and clients then eventually will see the new guy. So I think they're at that phase in their career where they really don't like being a veterinarian. I think my advice, either do something completely different, reinvent your career like I've done over and over, or just know that it's going to get better in time.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some wisdom in the words of kind of reinvent the career and take charge of the fact you can take it in whatever direction you'd like to go, if that's house call practice.
Yeah.
I think is
And
really.
or relief work. Some people are really awesome relief veterinarians.
Mhm.
I mean, I think I did a good job as a relief doctor because I could fit into any hospital environment. There's so many different hospitals out there that all work differently, and they all have different clientele, different equipment, different kinds of people working the front desk, different people working in the back as technicians. It's like really eye opening for me to see all of these, like literally 200 plus different veterinary hospitals.
Mhm.
And I know some veterinarians that I graduated with that went to one hospital after they graduated. They stayed at that one hospital for their whole career, ended up buying it, and now they're retiring and selling that hospital to somebody else. And I'm like, I feel bad because they didn't get to see a whole lot of veterinary medicine like I did.
Yeah, yeah. I likewise, I cherish my time as a relief vet. I still do a little relief here and there just to help out with clinics that I have a rapport with, but I really cherish all that I learned, and just there's so many tips and tricks and different personalities and different approaches to medicine and different management systems and all of that. So yeah, I mean, I guess what I would add on is just don't be afraid to shift out of whatever it is that's not working to kind of find your place in that path. And, I would say if someone's like really at the mental health state where suicide is on the table, get out right now. But, if you're not at that point, maybe pivot, shift. Don't be afraid to make changes. There's this sort of like learned helplessness that is ingrained in so many of us that we can't change the situation we're in. Sometimes we literally can't. We don't have the leverage to do it. But there are times that we can get so stuck and think that we work in this hospital. We have to continue working in this hospital. We can't get out. Sometimes we may have a non-compete, and that's real sense of stuckness at times. But yeah.
Mm. It's like any bad relationship, though. Sometimes people are in bad relationships with other humans,
Yeah.
but they're afraid to leave that bad relationship because they're going to be alone, or they're not going to, who's my next relationship going to be with then?
Yeah.
Like, So people are probably afraid to leave a hospital, even though it's a bad situation, it's familiar. So they're afraid to leave it in search of the unknown, like another hospital that might be even worse. Or, you know,
It could be. Like out of the pot into the frying pan. I mean, legitimate fears. And then you also have people who are in abusive relationships that can't leave because they've been psychologically damaged to not believe in themselves anymore and that they won't be able to, so there's that whole level of like can't leave, won't leave, abused. How do you leave that relationship, So it's just like so there's the whole range of it, I think, in your comparison to like a bad relationship that people have with clinics and with bosses. That there's the whole range of difficult relationships. And yeah, sometimes we need help to get out of them. And sometimes we just need to do the thing and get out of them. And yeah.
yeah, never be afraid to reinvent your career. It's the best advice I could give to anybody, really, especially veterinarians. Because it took me a while to figure out that I wanted to be a house call vet. If I thought about it when I first graduated, there's no way I would have been a house call vet. I would have been terrible.
Yeah.
Like I'm out there by myself and there's nobody giving me advice and this is before people had cell phones in their pockets that you could go like on the veterinary information network. You would literally just, if I did house calls in 1990, I would have just been like clueless and helpless and hopeless. And there's no way I would have wanted to do that at all.
Mhm. Yeah.
No safety in that at all.
Yeah.
So it's something that maybe, a new graduate can't really fall into house calls. I think you need to have some years of experience before you can jump into that field.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that in my personal opinion, I do know some not like straight out of school, but relatively new grads who are doing amazing and they have the support they need. But I think if you don't have support, you don't have a support network and mentors to rely on for the medical things that you're seeing on your own, I think it's a risky move for sure. Yeah. Well, Steve, thank you so much for your thoughts and your experience and wisdoms. And I appreciate you sharing about your own practice and how you got here. In order to close up the episode today, I would like to see what is your favorite beverage? Would you like to have a round of something?
My favorite beverage, alcoholic or non-alcoholic?
Let's hear one that's alcoholic and one that's non-alcoholic.
Okay. Well, honestly, my favorite beverage that's non-alcoholic is probably iced tea lemonade, like a Arnold Palmer,
Yeah. Yeah.
refreshing and tasty. Alcoholic, I have created a tiki bar in my home. So I've been doing a lot of recipes to try a lot of like cocktails and things. And I would say my favorite is a rum runner, which is light rum, dark rum, pineapple juice, Chambord, which is like raspberry liqueur, and banana liqueur. So that's what it is. So it's two kinds of rum, banana, Chambord, and pineapple.
That sounds absolutely delicious. I'm formally fighting myself over, and I'll order at least one of those.
Please do.
Fantastic, Steve. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I did want to just say the Zoom background that I'm using is a photograph of the inside of my car. And in the background of Steve's Zoom is just his regular background, but there is a birthday balloon there. So I just wanted to say happy birthday, Steve. And
Thank you.
it's great to have you with me today. And I can't wait to catch up at the Tiki Bar.
All right. Look forward to it.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the House Call Vet Cafe. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the subscribe or follow button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never have to miss an episode. This podcast is made specifically for you, so don't be shy if you'd like to reach out and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as the House Call Vet Academy, where I also share more valuable content. If you're interested in learning more about consulting for house call vets or the House Call Vet Academy online course and community, please click on the link in the show notes. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I can't wait for you to join us for our next episode of the House Call Vet Cafe.